himself. And they translated it as way. But if you have a doubt, you can do like I did. Just go down to a hotel, motel, anywhere and pick your freebie up. Turn to the Acts of the Apostles, the first book after the four Gospels, and you find what Saul says in chapter 9, verses 1 and 2. Saul, that's before he changed his name. Still breathing threats and murder against the disciples of the Lord. He murdered one of the disciples, by the way, named Stephen. He went to the high priest and asked for letters from the high priest to go to the synagogues of Damascus in Syria, so that if he found any who were of the way, whether men or women of the way, that he might bring them bound to Jerusalem. And by the way, don't take my word for it, look it up. Capital W-A-Y. Every time it's mentioned, capital W. And why do you capitalize a word in the middle of a sentence? Because it's called a what? A proper noun. The people were known as people of the way. Ahodin, people of the way. Let's go on. Acts 24:14. It says that he's telling the king, because he was brought there in chains himself, Paul, he changed his name by now, and he's telling them what he's upon. Okay, if you're with me on that. Anybody studied Medina know what I meant. Upon. He said, but this I confess to you. He's telling them what he's on. He said, according to the way, capital W-A-Y, which they call a sect. Meaning he's saying they call us a sect, but we're on the way. So I worship the Lord of my fathers, believing all things which are written in the law and in the prophets. And again, we find in chapter 22, verse 4, he said, I persecuted this way, capital W-A-Y, to the death, binding and delivering into prisons both men and women. In each case, they capitalized way because at the time they translated, they knew that that meant these were people of this way. And Paul goes on to tell them in another book. He wrote, by the way, 16 of the New Testament books. I don't know if you know this. There's only 27 books in the New Testament. He wrote 16 of them. That's why a lot of people call it the Pauline doctrine. He said they were never called Christians until Antioch, which is long after Jesus and even long after he became a Christian. They weren't called Christians. They were all called people of the way. He called himself a person of the way. Did you follow me yet? You with me yet? What's the relevance of this? It's because when you're showing people what's Islam, you're showing them it's the same thing that Jesus brought. It's the way. And the only way Allah is going to accept is the way that he ordains. And it's by his commandments. I'm going to cut out some more and just go to the very end now. This is almost the end because I've got something I want to read from the Quran before I finish. This is kind of nice. I'm reading out of Matthew, first gospel. Chapter 5, verse 17. In red letter edition, it'll be red because Jesus said it, according to them. Do not think I came to destroy the law or the prophets. And the word law is capitalized because it means the Torah, the Old Testament. And the word prophets is capitalized because it means the other books like Isaiah, Amos, and Zechariah, etc. I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill, for assuredly I say to you, until heaven and earth pass away, not a single jot or tittle or iota, depending on which translation you have, will pass away until all the law is fulfilled. Whoever breaks one of the least of the commandments and teaches men that it's okay, he shall be the least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does and teaches the commandments, he shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I say to you that unless your righteousness, your taqwa, exceeds the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. By the way, Paul was a Pharisee. And by the way, Paul broke the commandments. And by the way, not one, not the least, all of them. He clearly stated, because of the law I sin. Were it not for the law, I wouldn't sin. Therefore, I am dead to the law, and the law is dead to me. Same book. And when it came to circumcision, he changed it, and he said, you don't have to circumcise. Circumcision is of the heart. If that's true, where's the balance? Because in Islam, everything is equity. There's nothing, we don't do equality because that's stupid. But equity is real. Equity on every subject. So if God's going to change and make it so that the boys, the men, no longer need to be circumcised because it's circumcision of the heart, then where is the subject for the women in here? Because before the law got changed, what would it have been for them? There is no circumcision for the women, right? So, when he changed that law, what about for the women now? It looks like, I guess they always had circumcision of the heart, or what? No. No, this is a sign. This is a sign that you follow the Abrahamic faith. But he changed that. It's not the only one he changed. Pork's okay now. Never been okay before, but all of a sudden pork is okay. Muslims don't eat pork. Muslims still practice circumcision. When it came time for prayer, because Jewish face the east, have to pray certain direction. For Paul, nah, it's no big deal. Anyway, for us, we also face toward Mecca. But Muhammad, peace be upon him, faced Jerusalem just like all the other prophets until Allah changed that direction. What I'm making a point about is, we as Muslims support the truth of what still exists in the old religions. But the only way you're going to know it is to know that book right there. Because without the Quran, you won't know, well, was it this or was it that? Or was it something else? Proof? The next book is Mark. The last chapter of Mark ends according to the latest documents, scriptures and scrolls. The book of Mark ends at chapter 16, verse 9. And when he rose early on the first day of the week, he appeared first to Mary Magdalene, out of whom he had cast 7 demons. That's where it ended. But then another version came later, and it added 2 more verses, which are not in this one. And then this version came, and they added all the way up to verse 20. So you got a question, big question mark here. We're not talking about an iota or a tittle, as we heard about earlier. You've got a choice between a book that ends on chapter 16, verse 9, or 2 more verses that go on up to 11, or go up to 20 verses and they don't match. How do you know which one's which? How do you know? One of the hardest things for me when I got close to Islam was the idea of a son. Because I had been brainwashed since day one, God has a son. Son of God, Son of God, Son of God, Son of God. The only Son of God, the begotten Son of God. Heard it over and over and over. Just couldn't think of anything else until I read something that Ahmed Didat wrote. Well, what he said? Jesus called himself the Son of Man. I went, what? Whoa, let me look here. Yep, when you see the Son of Man coming in the glory of the Lord, it didn't say Son of God. Let me see that other one here. Son of Man. Son of Man. Who are you? Son of Man. It's Son of Man. I take it to my friend. I got another preacher friend. I took it to him. I said, look, did you know it says Son of Man? Look. He said, yes, it's capital S, capital M, Son of Man. What a capital idea that was. But then my dad was really the expert of the Bible in our family. Up until he died, nobody knew more about the Bible than he did. He said, son, go to Genesis. That's the very first book, very beginning. Look, see? Can you see? I'm in the very beginning. Chapter 6, verse 2. Chapter 6, verse 2. That the sons of God. How many? It doesn't say. It has this after it. Saw the daughters of men that they were beautiful and took wives for themselves from whom they chose. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not strive with man forever, for he is indeed flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men of old and renown. Sons of God. That's what it says. And I said, well, Dad, what do I believe about that? He said, it just means that you need to keep reading. Keep thinking. Because sons doesn't mean God had a biological child. My own father said that. Of course, he read it since he was a kid. Then you start turning some pages and you start realizing, wait a minute. There's something called the book of Job here. And I've got it open to the book of Job right now. Let me look in here and read to you from it. Chapter 2, first words. Again, there was a day when the sons of God, came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came amongst them to present himself before the Lord.